Hi everyone, how's it going today? This Monday again. So, onegashimasu everyone. Uh, I'd like to start off with a quote because we're going over number 22 in preparing for training. But if you're looking at your manual, you won't see a number 22 because number 22 kind of got bunched up with number 18 at the end. And Curtis Sensei kind of explained this to me, and I told him we'd go over it tonight when I spoke to him on Saturday. So, first with a quote. Up to Shodan, or first degree black belt, learning Aikido is mostly a matter of technique. Any fool can achieve Shodan with enough practice. Beyond that, Aikido training is mostly a matter of refining your ki and character. Unfortunately, many people drop out or stagnate when they achieve black belt because they are unwilling or unable to change themselves. Others continue to practice techniques but never gain the respect that their rank would indicate because they fail to develop themselves. The first degree of black belt in Aikido is like a high school diploma. The second degree is like a college degree, with further degrees representing further amounts of graduate education. It is better to have rank than not to have, but having a rank and living up to it are two different things. Like a diploma, a rank in Aikido may just mean that you put in your time and learned a few things. The real test is how you meet the demands of daily life off campus, where a diploma may neither be a guarantee nor even a predictor of success. Just as there are PhD holders pumping gas, there are many black belts in martial arts who, off the mat, only make use of a fraction of their potential. And that is a quote from Toi Sensei from the book A Road Anyone Can Walk, that was written by Will Reed. And I have a short other quote that you may recognize, very similar. It's much shorter, more condensed. It basically says, even though we like to say that rank is not important to us, and while in some ways that may be true, rank does have some meaning. What is that meaning? I'd like to suggest that the real meaning here is that we are given rank not for ourselves, but for others. When we receive a higher rank, this gives us more responsibility towards others. And that is from Curtis Sensei. Uh, I believe it's in Letting Go because it was one of his teachings that I had just from in my collection of things. So what I'd like to start off with, I've got some ideas, but I'll read from the book number 22 where it should be, and it basically states the student must never ask to test or request rank promotion. Why do you think that's in there? Seems kind of obvious, doesn't it? So let me ask someone where they come across, where this comes across to them. I just read you the quote about what rank means according to Toi Sensei. Another quote from Curtis Sensei talking about the responsibilities of rank. So, Fincher, you look like you want to talk. What does this mean to you, my friend?
I was actually reading, Sensei.
So tell me, or tell us.
Well, number 18, it's interesting. Not only does it say the student
Well,
is
yeah,
never asked to test, it says you shouldn't drink and train at the same
right.
time.
And we covered
Are they
that.
somehow
Those got
connected?
merged. Those got merged together. So Curtis Sensei wanted me to specifically section that out because that should be number 22.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Well,
why.
I think more than anything else, what readily comes to mind is that the student really is not so much aware of their level of training. Uh, he comes so like like blinded with all the techniques and getting good and wanting rank and all of that. So I think part of the understanding of this training is to defer to your sensei. And in doing that, you can become better. You can understand better where your place is in this training. When you go in and we have the opportunity when we go into the dojo, we can sit down with sensei before class and just, chat, ask questions, and a lot of times we get an indication that way of where we're at and what we're doing. But a lot of students don't do that. So they don't really have input from the sensei on a regular basis where they're at in their training. And I would imagine most senseis in their dojos are observing the students quite closely and holding them in their thoughts and holding them in their, covering them in ki. And if you're not spending time with your sensei, you don't really get that feedback. So I guess it's just, you're just like really going in blind if you're going up to your sensei and asking him for a rank, for a testing, because you should know at that point what he would say. If you are counseling and connecting with your sensei. So to me, a person that comes in and asks that question hasn't done their homework. They haven't spent time with their sensei. They haven't connected. And they don't know that answer before they ask it, where they should know that answer before they ask it. Anyway, that's my take.
Okay. That's good. I liked getting your point of view, Fincher. I was in Sensei's office. I was sitting in Sensei's office probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. And a student walked in and basically said, Sensei, I think I'm ready. And I think he was going for Nidan or Sandan. I can't quite remember. He was either Shodan or Nidan. And he said, I think I'm ready. And Sensei was like, what? Ready for what? Oh, I think I'm ready to test. And Sensei said, oh, really? What rank are you? Can you tell me, and asked him a few questions. And it was quite interesting because as soon as he walked out, Sensei looked at me and goes, has he even read the training manual? How can I promote him if he hasn't read the training manual? It's right there in the training manual. You never ask for promotion. And he just didn't realize, that that's something you don't do. And it was shocking. But I'm telling you, it happens a lot. You may think it doesn't happen, but I'm telling you, it does. And it really indicates a lack of connection, I think. That's my take on it. But Toby Vogel Sensei, talk to me about what you think about this.
I think that when you ask the question as a student, you imply that you know better than your teacher, that you know that he has missed something or that he hasn't seen you in that case. So I don't think you should do it. You shouldn't ask it. That's why it's in there. I do think that the testing is we say that Aikido is non-competitive, but I think that with this testing, with the fact that you can reach different levels, Aikido, even Ki Aikido becomes really competitive because people want to, gain these levels and try to achieve these levels. and compare themselves to other people achieving those levels and thinking that, you know, my Nidan was much better than the other person's Nidan and so on. So I think it's really a strange. I understand the fact that you can show the teacher can show your level of understanding by, you know, promoting you and having you taking a test. But I do think that within the whole concept of Aikido, this becomes very competitive, makes it maybe even more difficult for students to just practice and not focus on this goal of achieving something.
Have you had any students ask you to
Of
test?
course, of course.
And was it the lower ranking students or higher ranking students?
Mostly lower ranking students. Yeah, yeah.
Sure. You know, what do you follow the same test standards that they have in Japan?
Say that again. Do I
The
follow?
the same test standards, like, you know, you can test after this many hours. You know, there's a kind of curriculum for.
Yeah, we Dutch, my father and I, we are very careful about that. We cut it in the class. We took the hours that stand for it, and then we checked in our training how many hours you would be needing to follow the classes, and we made some kind of system to make it clear. But that's a bit too much. We overdid it, I think. So we have to change that again. But we are looking for at least the period of training that you spend, because some people might even go faster or some people might even go slower. But we try to find an average. I think maybe that's a Dutch thing, you know, trying to make everything right for everyone.
Okay. I asked because, of course, I was on the mainland for quite some time, and when I was on the mainland, we had a different testing requirement than Japan. You know, the teacher there, Your Sensei, had created his own testing curriculum of how many hours for each rank, and what it turned out to be, it would be like if you followed it exactly, minimum 5 to 6 years just to get Shodan. I think I was like 5.5 years to get Shodan, and then it was another 3 to get Nidan, and so on and so forth. It was quite extensive. I mean, it was just done differently, and I was what that breeds is arrogance, because since it took me so long to get the rank, I was super proud of it. And I, for example, I remember thinking, there's a lot of people that had trained shorter periods of time, were higher ranked than me, but, I'd always go, well, I know more Taigis than them because we had to do Taigis before. Or I'm always hesitant, I remember talking to Curtis Sensei and Suzuki Sensei about this, and because Suzuki Sensei was, the fact to promote them as fast as you can to Sandan, and then stop them and see what happens. He would always stop people at Sandan, and then from there, he'd really want to see their interdiscipline training transform them. Because, as you can tell from what Toi Sensei said in his quote, he wants to see, change. They have to change themselves, because anybody can do techniques, so to speak. And following the protocol for what headquarters does, I think, looking back on it, I think that's really important, because it gives a really nice rhythm to promotions. However, take it from me, who struggled, and 5 years to Shodan, 8 years to Nidan, that breeds a different rhythm and a different sense of yourself, where you can become, arrogant. You can become. It gives more openings to not changing yourself, but relying on the teaching that basically to change you, which is looking from the outside in rather than from the inside out. But with that being said, Charles Boyer Sensei, what can you say?
Well, thank you, Sensei. Yeah, so it's almost the opposite problem, if you want to put it that way. I started in South Carolina under Shaner Sensei, and he pretty much subscribes to the Suzuki Sensei method. So when I was testing, I don't think I ever felt completely prepared for any of the tests I took under him, because he just kept moving us so quickly. And I mean, Shodan was quite a bit less than 5 years for me. So I felt woefully underprepared for that test. And, when so there wasn't any opportunity or any even inkling of a chance of me asking for promotion because of just that. I'm in our dojo. I like to follow that pattern myself. I think it pushed me as a young student, and I like to push my students as much as I can. So we almost have like the opposite problem, if you want to say, in our dojo, which is like me asking people to test and then saying, can I wait? Can I put it off for a year or 6 months or whatever? I'm not ready. And of course, that's also similar to what Vogel Sensei is saying. It's like not really believing in my judgment. They're kind of questioning my judgment of their level and their ability in a sense. But that's okay. I mean, whatever the people's, wherever they are in their understanding of this will determine those kind of responses. And again, I think I said this early in a different class that we have our students, we have an older group. So maybe some feel less physically capable or just can't invest the time to prepare. But that's kind of where we are. I don't know, maybe I was asked, maybe one time someone asked me about promotion and when they could take a test, when I thought they could take a test. And other than that, it's usually the opposite. I'm asking people to test and they're telling me they're not ready. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure it happens both ways. Yeah, but I like to push the students too. I do like to keep them moving and keep them testing. And
Yeah, that's good. And I think many of you may have heard this story, but for those who haven't, Suzuki Sensei spent a time in Japan, and when he was there, Toy Sensei asked him, Sensei, I'm gonna promote you to sixth dan. And Suzuki said, "Oh, no, Sensei, please do not promote me. I do not want sixth dan." And Toy Sensei said, okay, no problem. I won't promote you. And then a year or so went by, and Toy Sensei said, Suzuki-san, I'm going to promote you this year to Rokudan, to sixth dan. Oh, please, Sensei, please, no, I don't want to get promoted, please. And this time, Toy Sensei said, hey, what's the matter with you? Why don't you want to be promoted? This is a problem, because here's the thing, Suzuki, you're selfish. You are holding everybody back. And Suzuki Sensei was like, what? Holding people, what? He really took that seriously. He was like, What do you, he didn't quite, he said, what do you mean, Sensei? What do you mean I'm holding people back? I just don't want to get promoted. And he said, listen, I got to promote you. If I don't promote you, I can't promote anybody else because I can't promote anybody above you. I can't promote anybody the same as you because you're developed. You're developing on a rapid basis being here with me. So come on, I got to promote you. Otherwise, you're going to hold everybody else back. And then Suzuki Sensei, yes, thank you, Sensei. I'll accept the promotion. And not many people know this. I know this. Maybe Fincher knows this. Glenn, of course, Curtis Sensei knows this. Suzuki Sensei has 2 6-dan ranks. 2. I've seen them because I cleaned out his house one day when he was there, and he handed me every one of his promotion certificates from Shodan up. So I was like amazed. I rolled them up in a little tube, took them off to my house, opened them up, got Sayaka over there. Sayaka, you got to translate all these things. They're all in Japanese. And the thing of it is the Shodan certificates back in the 50s are like the paper that's on the Rokudan paper. You know, if you have ever seen a Rokudan paper certificate, it's really, really expensive rice paper. And back in the day, that's what they put the Shodan certificates on. And his Shodan certificates are signed by O Sensei. You know, Shodan, Nidan, Sandan, I believe, are all signed by O Sensei. And then we get, you know, we're sorting through these, and she's, you know, we were looking at the serial numbers. And if I had prepared properly for this class, I could tell you all the serial numbers for all the same. I got it all written down. And we get there, and she goes, "Oh, this is funny." And I said, "Well, what's that?" "Well, he's got two 6-dan certificates." I go, "What?" "Yeah, two 6-dan certificates. This one here, and then this one here. But they're dated differently." And I said, well, tell me about it. What does it say exactly?" And she looked down and said, "Well, this one's from the Aikikai, because it was right around 1974, right before the split. And this one's from the Key Society after the split. And it's like serial number 2. Now we got the second one." And I was like, "Oh my God." So I went back and I said, "Oh, Sensei," I said, "You got we got 2 Rokudan certificates. How'd that come about?" I was, "Oh yeah, I forgot about that." What it was is I was there at the meeting when it was him and Mariama and Oshima, a bunch of people went for the big split when they had the big negotiations with the Doshu. And at that time, they were supposed to they forgot to give me my Rokudan certificate. So it got put in a drawer at the Aikikai headquarters, at the Hombu Dojo. His Rokudan certificate got put in a drawer in 1974. So like in the 80s, mid 80s, they were cleaning up, I guess, the Aikikai, pulled out this drawer, opened this tube up and go, "Oh man, this is Suzuki-san. He's in Maui." And then one guy happened to say, "Oh, I'm going to vacation in Maui." "Oh, okay, here, give this to Suzuki-san when you're there." So this guy that knew Suzuki Sensei back in the day shows up at his house and says, "Oh, we are very sorry. Please forgive us. You know, here is your Rokudan certificate. It's been at the Aikikai Hombu Dojo since 1974. And so Suzuki Sensei took it and, put it away, and that was that. But it was just, so interesting to hear Suzuki Sensei talk about this story of him refusing rank, and about how Toi Sensei scolded him about, not accepting, and that he would be holding people back. So that being said, I'd like to ask Ilaria, so what's your take on rank promotions, and maybe tell us about how you prepared for your ranks?
Hello, Sensei. Ilaria from Seattle. My take on rank promotion.
Your teacher's watching, by the way. I just want to remind you, Paiva Sensei's really good.
just remembering what Jack said at the last class, how Paiva Sensei always told us every rank going up to Shodan is preparation for Shodan, and once you reach Shodan, then you really start the training. And she did tell me one time, well, if you start Aikido as a child, you can't reach Shodan after a certain age, because it just has to do with maturity and development. So she's told me before, you've done more years of training to reach your Shodan than most adults, and that's a good thing. And I was like, yeah, cool, okay, great. I don't really know what else to say.
Well, I think that's fine. I mean, starting as a child gives you a different perspective for sure, because there are age requirements for certain promotions. And if you've ever been to testing on Maui, the first thing when all the children's teachers get in there and talk to Sensei, and they'll go, they did a good test, well, okay, but they're not old enough to take the next test, so we'll just have them retake it. And they have a grading level on Maui. A, B, and C, right? A, you get to take the test for the next rank your next time, but if you get a B, you got to retake it, but you can wear the belt of the next rank. So, and then C, of course, you fail it. And Curtis Sensei has great stories about failing his 5th Q test. However, I do know about that because Suzuki Sensei kind of told me, and I found the rank thing, but I'm not gonna put it on this class because he'll get mad at me. So I would like to ask Vernon Liu, who recently tested last year or the year before last. Vernon, what can you tell us about your testing? You tested in Hilo, I believe, right?
Yes. I looked at my records by testing last year in Sandan. My last test before that was Nidan. And I had a break, and that was back in the fall of '82 when I had my Nidan. But even prior to my Nidan, when I became Shodan, I first joined the Aikido, Ki Aikido, back in '76, the fall of '76. And in '79, the fall, I believe I got Shodan, just 3 years or so. And then after that, in the fall of '82, I got Nidan. So in preparation, I was going to class, every class in those years, in the early years, until I left the islands in '83. So in preparation for my Sandan is going to every class and absorbing the change and learning the principles stayed with me all these years, but learning new ways of how it was taught and absorb myself with the new way of change with Ki Aikido. So it's a great journey of all the techniques come into play, but just absorb the way of the new experience that I felt when I first met Toi Sensei back in '78 in one of the seminars. I just felt how he had went to the whole gym and seminar and touched everyone, and it was totally something that you don't ever felt the same for any of the level of senseis that demonstrated that technique. So it just and the reason why I left, or it wasn't finding the right dojo to practice back again and again. So this helped me get back to that same level and experiencing that same level of teachings that I originally read and were taught, and was also experiencing other people of how I taught them to experience their full potential. So
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. That's very interesting. You know, different generations like Shodan in the 80s, 90s, you know, Nidan and then Sandan now. So that's really good. I'm glad you're a part of our group for sure. I'd like to go back to Europe. Olaf Schubert Sensei, can you talk to us about this?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have 2 Sandan certificates, as has Toby Vogel Sensei, I guess. But this is due to changing organizations. Yeah, here in Europe, I don't think I can speak in generalization, but what I have come across is that we tend to have people train longer for their testings. And that has always been, whatever dojo I was in, that was always kind of the standard. And yeah, in Key Society, what Curtis Sensei told me and how it's done in Maui to promote people fast, and then for the higher ranks, wait for their development. I try to do this, but since most students are not really young coming into Ki Aikido, and they train once or twice a week, I often run into the problem that Boya Sensei was saying, that I have to push people to take tests because they don't feel ready. And of course, it has to do with people wanting to be perfect, or if I take this test, I really want to have it done and down, and I want to have a beautiful test, and no, I'm not ready yet. And so this is this strive for perfection that we all have, I guess. And but sometimes I also think it's kind of a humbleness that is maybe misplaced. So, you know, if you know what I mean, some people put this humbleness in front of them kind of artificially. No, I'm not. I'm not interested in rank, and but they really are interested. They just put that in front to seem developed or something. You know, this goes hand in hand with asking for rank. I had people ask me for rank all the way up to what we have in our dojo. And I find it tricky. And it's always, I wonder why we have to put this in the training manual. Why can't people see this by themselves? I mean, how would you ever want to ask for testing? I don't see how this lack of connection with the sensei, how this lack of respect for what the sensei is, how the sensei is watching you could ever come in. But I think it does, because of all of those reasons. People want to have a gratification for all their training, or whatever the reason is. I don't know. It's tricky. But I more often run into the problem of asking people and they tell me, oh, let's wait, I'm not ready, more often than I'm getting asked, I want to test, why don't you test me? This is rather rare now.
Yeah.
This is my take.
Good. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I can see, you know, both what you and Boyer Sensei are saying of having to push people, and we get this a lot. I mean, in Maui as well, with people going, oh, I don't feel ready, you're never going to feel ready. I mean, if you do, then probably there's something wrong. But your tests are never, we always want our tests to be perfect, you know, a perfect representation. I've seen Curtis Sensei's Sandan test. He doesn't like people to look at it. Doesn't like people to look. He's like, throw that tape away, you know, get rid of that. I don't want anybody to see that ever again. You know, I think we sometimes have a dojo movie night where we'll show all these old movies of, you know, Toy Sensei and Suzuki Sensei, because when Suzuki Sensei went to Japan, he took a camera, like an old black and white camera, and videotaped O Sensei and Toy Sensei and a lot of the top teachers back at the Hombu Dojo. And, you know, you can't hear any sound, but you can at least watch it. It's entertaining. I mean, I've seen it so many times that, you know, it's good for people who are interested in that. And I think every once in a while I either threaten or say, hey, let's put in Curtis Sensei's, you know, Sandan test. No, you know, he did not like that at all. Anytime, you know, Curtis Sensei would travel, a lot of times we, like when he came to Arizona or when Suzuki Sensei came to Arizona, we would videotape the seminar with their permission, you know, and we'd have that for our records. And I remember when I moved here, I had an old VHS of Curtis Sensei teaching a seminar in Phoenix and in Scottsdale, and he just did not want to see that at all. He just, no, don't throw that away. That's not what we're doing now. Because you can get kind of stuck, you know, you look at, you know, how you used to do techniques and how they've evolved, it's changed. But moving forward, Paiva Sensei, you've had some experiences, not only promoting people, but testing yourself, because tell us something. I'm sure you've got something good to share.
Okay. So Lillian from the Big Island. And I almost feel like you're trying to get some dirt from Ilaria on me. Most of my students come in around 7 years old, and they stay till they graduate high school, and they're off to college or off to somewhere. I don't get a lot of adults. They come and go. But the children that come have been very, very committed. So when they come in, I followed Curtis's manual probably almost too much, except that I don't do the class A, B, C kind of thing with the younger belts. When they come in, I talk to them and their parents. I meet with them a couple times when they get there to explain, you know, the ranking and the protocol. So I very seldom get asked anything about anything because I kind of make that clear from the beginning. And I tell my students that they will test if they can say the name of the throws. You know, we test twice a year, but they need to be able to say the names of the techniques. And when they get up to 5th Q, they're expected to make every single seminar that's available on our island, which is usually 2 to 3 a year. I want everybody to know their face and know who they are. And the closer they get to Shodan, they're expected to try to get to Maui to practice on their own at least once before the Shodan test to get cleaned up and maybe some really nice pointers that I may have missed. So that's kind of where we go. In my dojo, I'm the only teacher. So I have at other dojos heard people ask to be tested. And I actually heard a high-ranking person say, oh no, I'm not going to be tested when Curtis Sensei said so. And like Schubert Sensei said and Boyer Sensei said, I find this kind of disrespectful. Although I almost did the same thing after my Nidon test, because when you and I were practicing for my Nidon test that weekend, I took it on Kauai, and I realized, oh, I made a lot of mistakes on some of these techniques. And because I'm sort of out in the boonies, it's not always easy for me to get to Hilo or somewhere to clean up my techniques back then. So I had gone to Curtis Sensei that weekend. I said, you seen how I've been working with Tracy Sensei. Are you sure you still want to test me this weekend? And he said, yes, we're doing it. And of course, after the test, I knew why. But After my Sandan test, because Vernon Lou, I think it was Gloria and I took our Sandan test the same weekend. And my daughter videotaped it. And I told her, don't you ever show me that test. I want to remember in my head that I'm skinny and I'm graceful and that I had a great time. Because I approached my Sandan test as, this is going to be a great experience no matter what. And one way or another, I'm just going to love it. And, you know, unless I missed something, that's pretty much where I'm at.
Good, good. Yes, I remember your Nidon test. It was a good test. You know, Kurta Sensei only makes me pair up with people before their test to make them extra nervous. I just have that ability, you know. That was my job. So anyway, it's kind of like, you know, when Kurta Sensei will call you up if you're, and he would have you, he would look at you and go, hold him. And you're just like, oh God, I'm going to have to hold this person now, really? And of course, then it builds a little frustration and a little excitement. Sensei always likes a little drama in the class to heighten everybody up. Yeah, I'd like to get Gloria Falstrom's input because she also tested with Vernon and Lillian last year. Gloria, what can you say?
Okay, thank you, Sensei. Well, I've had several different experiences. When I was training with Nalawai Sensei, he really did not care about ranks. His focus was on key. And I found out that if I wanted to advance at all, I had to go to classes that some of his advanced students were teaching, and so I did. And when I was training for Nidon, I was going 10 hours a week, which astonishes me. It's though we're getting close to it with our Zoom meetings. And I almost had to ask him if I could take the test because he just was sort of detached from everything, but he did approve my taking the test with Tabata Sensei. And shortly after that, I think it was a kind of an island-wide meeting, Tabata Sensei said you should, or it was close to 6 months, he said you should take Nidon. And I went, we don't practice the arts. Then, of course, it didn't occur to me that I went to his Friday night classes, I could learn the arts. So it was, I think, close to 30 years before I took Nidon, and Boyer Sensei was head sensei by then, and he said, I need to have you take Nidon so that I can start promoting some other people behind you. So I had the Suzuki experience. And then then before we started training for Sandan, one advanced sensei who ought to know better said to me, he said, you should ask Boyer Sensei to have you tested for Sandan. And I said, we don't ask to be tested. You know, that's not what we do. I'm not going to ask him. Oh, you should ask him. And I'm like that. And then we had an experience with one student who was really very, very good. He was testing for, let's see, fourth degree, fourth Q. Wait, let's see, we go fifth, fourth, no, third, or second Q. And so one of them, he applied to be promoted by skipping a rank, and he took his test. And those of us who were sitting at the testing table agreed that he should only be promoted to the next level. And so when Nalawai Sensei was congratulating us for passing tests, he said that that this particular student was promoted to not quite as high as he wanted to be. And so he asked why. And Nalawai Sensei said, if you have to ask that question, I know we made the right decision. And so for 2 weeks, he didn't come to class. And I don't know if he and Nalawai Sensei talked, but he apparently had a real soul searching. And when he came back, he really started training, and he became exactly like Nalawai Sensei in what he did in his movement. And that was a very interesting experience.
Interesting.
So that's about it.
So he was so let me get this straight because I want to understand. So he was like in the Q ranks, and they were going to promote him a couple ranks ahead.
No, he asked to be promoted a couple ahead. I think
Asked.
he was going. His next natural belt would be first level brown belt, and he asked to be promoted to first level brown belt. And we did not do that. We only moved him up one rank.
Very interesting. I've never had anybody ask that question. But anyway, that's good. That's a good story. I like that. Thank you so much. I'd like to go back to Europe. Let's see here. Christoph.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sensei. I don't know what I can say about that. When I started Ki Aikido, I did it because I was attracted by what I understood about Aikido. Because I was in Japan, I wanted to have the experience of doing something very Japanese. I had judo in my life previously, and I thought Aikido was an interesting evolution. But I had no idea whatsoever of what the Ki Aikido world was about, if I can put it this way. And it was not in my imagination that one day I would become Shodan, because I was an adult already, and I was thinking, I'm doing this just to go out, find people, and experience something. And so becoming Shodan was not on the horizon for me somehow. But then, as I told you, I was with Oba Sensei, and I never asked him why, but and maybe he does this with people, I don't know. But I started from 10Q on, so I had to take 10Q, 9Q, 8Q, 7Q, 6Q, 5Q, 4Q, 3rd Q, and then for the key test, he had me taking A test, B test, C test, and then I started with the show Q, etc. So the 2 years I was there, my life was going to work, going to Aikido, taking tests, going to work, going to Aikido, taking tests, not really understanding what this was about, but there was a rhythm. And then when I left Japan, I was 3rd Q, and I was thinking, okay, great, I have a job in Europe. I was happy there was an address with Ki Aikido practice in Europe, and that was it. And then Oba Sensei told me, Christophe, you should find a way to teach Aikido in Europe. And I was thinking, what? What is he talking about? I'm 3rd Q. And I arrived with this in Europe with this kind of contradicting emotions and thoughts. And then in Europe, things went very, very different, I would say. And then things really kind of slowed down. But that maybe is what is worth saying about that. So asking for testing, no, I don't think I asked for testing, for being tested. I tried to make some sense out of this step by step, with the context I was in, etc. Of course, when there was a very long period between my Shodan and my Nidan for all sorts of reasons, and taking my Nidan was emotionally very, very, very strange, because I had the impression of reconnecting with some rhythm. I had the impression of reconnecting with something I had stopped for a long, long period of time. Voilà. I don't know if this is making sense and helping the discussion, but this is maybe what I had to say.
Well, I remember you telling us about, I remember when you came to Maui and you told us about Oba Sensei putting you through the ringer. Taking all the kids' tests all the way up to 5th Q, and you were like, I
Yeah,
don't know why he did that, but he just did it, and that's what I did.
yeah. So I have a pile of diploma like that. Because I have all these papers, because each time I would receive a certificate, of course.
Right, right. I get it.
And I had to learn by heart the shokushu in Japanese. So all the key sayings I would say in Japanese. And each time I had one or two more texts to speak out for my test. So yeah, I was sharing that with Curtis Sensei. To learn my shokushu, I would go to work on bicycle, and then on my way to work in the middle of the paddy field, I would try to remember my key sayings in Japanese because I could not really understand what I was talking about. This was purely phonetic. But last time when Curtis Sensei wrote the key saying in Japanese, I had images of paddy fields coming to my brain because some words, some of this music is identified with this kind of emotions I was going through.
Right, right. That's so good. You know, everyone, you know, we all have these experiences and how we get promoted, and we have distinct memories, you know, of, you know, right before my Sandan test, or no, my Nidan test, I think it was, I couldn't train for 2 weeks. 2 weeks before test, I couldn't train. I got really, really sick and almost hospitalized. Couldn't train for 2 weeks prior to my test. So basically, I show up to my test, zero practice in 2 weeks. You know, it was, and I was miserable. I mean, you can even see on my test. I videotaped that test. And of course, you know, I was very proud of my test. And I brought it. When I brought to Maui, I brought my laptop in the office and sat down with Suzuki Sensei and Curtis Sensei and said, oh, yeah, here's my Nidan test. Here, watch this. This is really good. Watch. You know, I'm doing this. I look back on that now. I can't believe I was such an, I don't know what I was. I was not in the right state of mind to bring my computer in the office, flip it up, put my Nidan test, and go, hey, Suzuki Sensei, this is what I did. I'm telling you, they were really nice about this. They watched the entire test. Suzuki Sensei said, good, you didn't forget any techniques, but where's the Kokyu? I just went, shut the laptop. Yeah, I didn't have any. Sensei, I'm leaving here. I laugh about that now. I just kind of thought of that story. It just kind of came into my head. You're telling me about, you know, going through memorizing stuff, thinking, I thought it was just so good. I just thought it was so good. I'm going to show both Curtis Sensei and Suzuki Sensei how good I am on my Nidan test, since they couldn't see it. So I'm on DVD. Got it right here, Sensei. Yeah. Don't ever do that. So with that being said, let me see. I'd like to ask John Hara, because John tested for Shodan and had quite the experience. I'm sure he'd like to share something with us, John.
Hi, Sensei. Thank you very much for the opportunity. When I was taking my Shodan test, well, I was taking it with 4 other people, and it was a little bit chaotic because we couldn't organize time to train. And at that time, I also felt like I was being rushed to take my test. But then now that I look back on it, I think it was a good you don't have to attain this sort of perfection. Like I was imagining, like, as a Shodan, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge, a certain amount of skill and ability. But now that I am Shodan, I realize that's not important. You know, it's your attitude, right? So when I was training with other students working towards Shodan, we were constantly arguing with each other. And somehow we, got together at the very end, and we took our Shodan together. And it really worked out. We got closer to each other. And yeah, I think as far as testing goes, Maui, I feel definitely feels like a little bit quick on the ranking part, but again, that's about trusting your sensei and just listening, and not so much about skill or knowledge, but more just the attitude. Yeah, so that's all I've got to say.
Good, good. Thanks for sharing, John. I witnessed all that, so it was good to hear your point of view on it. Let's see. I think we have time for one more. How about Christelle? First time I went to Europe, I met her in Germany. It was really fun. It was my very first time to Europe, 2006. I'll never forget. So you have to unmute yourself.
Okay. During this discussion, I remembered all the times I made a test. And for me, is the important thing the connection to my sensei and the trust in my sensei. Toby Vogels is my sensei, and I have a very deep connection with him. And I know that he can read my mind, and he knows well. Even though I train in Germany and he trains in Helmond, I know that he knows my mind, and he knows my state of awareness and so on. That's I can say about it. And when I go in the past, I made my Shodan exam by Kyoto Sensei, and I was very much injured before, so I give all up my hopes and my expectations. And doing the test, I feel very bad about me, about myself, and I have the remembering that that it was the worst test I ever made. But it wasn't so. Kyoto Sensei congratulate to my test, and but it took me 2 weeks to realize what really has happened then. So it was a very deep experience, and it was the experience to give up all your expectations and to be perfect or to be, yeah. Okay, this was it. It was a very deep.
Yeah, that was a deep experience, I'm sure. Thank you so much for sharing. I really like to hear, you folks talk about your tests that you've done in front of Curtis Sensei. It's always good to hear. I mean, I thoroughly enjoy hearing everyone else's stories. With that being said, we're at the end, and I have the story to continue that we discussed where last week where the prince had got caught picking the wrong apple, and he has to go find the sword of brightness. So here he is. He drew out his barley straw and threw his leg over it, and there he sat astride his yellow horse again. I should like, said he, to be carried to where I can find the sword of brightness that shines in the darkness and cuts whatever its edge is turned against. That was all that he had to say, and away clattered the yellow horse over stock and stone, so that the ground smoked beneath his hooves. On they went, and they went far for a great long while, until at last it came to a tall castle, as black as your hat, and there was there the sword of brightness to be found. In front of the castle gate lay two great fiery dragons, with smoke coming up out of their nostrils instead of the breath of life. And all over their bodies were brazen scales that shone like gold in the sunlight. But both dragons were sound asleep. Inside of the courtyard were many fierce soldiers armed in shining armor, and each with a battle axe or a sword or an iron club lying beside him. But they too were sound asleep, just as the dragons. Down jumped the prince from the great yellow horse, and there was the barley straw again. Put it behind his ear, and he took out the book of knowledge from his pocket, and this is what it said. Fear not the dragons, nor the fierce soldiers, for they will not awaken. But take only the leather scabbard with the sword. So up walked the prince, as bold as brass, and the soldiers and dragons were still fast asleep. But just as they snored away so that the windows rattled, into the castle he walked, and nobody said no to him. There sat an old man, as wicked as sin and as gray as the ashes. He never moved a hair, only his little red eyes turned here and there. A great keen sword lay on the table in front of him, and the light on the blade was like the bright flash of lightning. The prince took the sword up from the table, and the little old man looked at him, but never said a word. On the wall hung 3 scabbards. One was gold, studded all over with precious stones. Another of silver that gleamed like the light of the moon in frosty weather. And the third was nothing but an old, shabby, worm-eaten leather scabbard that looked like it had just been pulled out of the trash. Gee, said the prince, I've learned my lesson here. It'd be a pity, though, to put such a fine sword in such a poor scabbard. But I've learned that I shouldn't select the gold one, because that's what happened at the Tree of Happiness when he selected the gold apple. So I think the silver one seems about right. That's bright. It's bright like the sword. So he took down the silver scabbard and thrust the sword into it, and for no sooner that he'd sheathed the sword in the silver scabbard, that the old gray man began to thump on the table in front of him and yell at the top of his voice, "Help, help, there's someone here who's going to steal the sword of brightness." At this moment, the soldiers woke up and began to clash and rattle with their battle axes and swords and iron clubs, and the dragons began to roar and send clouds of smoke of fire. In ran the soldiers that were going to put an end to the prince without another word. But he begged and prayed and prayed and begged that his life might be spared, just as he had done with the giants over at the Tree of Happiness. Listen, said the old gray man, if you promise to bring me the white bird from the Black Mountain, I will not only spare your life, but I will give you the sword of brightness in the bargain. Yes, said the prince, get the white bird. If anybody in the world can get it, I can get it. And thereupon, they let him go. And we'll stop there. Till next Monday, thanks a lot for joining. Domo arigatou gozaimashita, and I'll see you guys next week.